Hi guys, I'm Bree.
And I'm Allie. This is Off Script.
If you think about it, books are potential scripts for movies.
When this adaptation happens, typically it's disappointing because they went off script.
In this series, we will be talking about how off script they went. Hello everyone,
And welcome to Off Script,
a podcast.
where I'm Allie.
And I'm Bree. We suck at introducing ourselves in our podcast, guys.
And we compare books to their movies.
And today's an exciting one because
We have some wonderful guests with us.
yeah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm MK.
And I'm Sam, and we are from East Coast Haunts podcast.
Yay!
Woo!
Our first podcast collab.
We're so excited to have you guys.
We're
Very
so
excited to
excited
be
to be
here.
here.
Yes, and yeah, you came for a fun one. We're doing Amityville Horror, right up your alley. What is your podcast about?
So our podcast, we, like the name implies, East Coast Haunts, we cover the history and hauntings of like different historical places on the East Coast. So we've done like pretty much one from every state at this point. We've been doing
So
it
cool.
for about a year and a half now. You know, it is not super serious. You know, we have fun with it, but also respectful of like, you know, the history and the hauntings of these places.
We've been able to do everything from like inns and hotels to
So fun.
like forests, anything that's a place, we try to go there. And sometimes we go rogue and we go to places that are not specifically on the East Coast. But yeah, it's a fun mix of history and spooky stuff. So it's super fun.
That's
so
awesome.
fun. Have you ever actually gone to the place, or do you just research and talk about the place?
Yes. So the very first episode that we did, we wanted to do somewhere that we had already been together. So a couple summers ago, we went to Gettysburg over Easter break, which is like quite random. But we went to the Farnsworth House with it, which is a Civil War era right? Civil War. Sorry, we went a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Civil War.
A Civil War era. I mean, now it's an inn, but back then it
In
served many
restaurant.
purposes. So
Mhm.
we've been there, and then Mary Kate, tell them about some of the other places we've been.
We have like a couple that we've been to, like just, and we didn't even realize it was haunted. Like I grew up in New Jersey, so we covered the Pine Barrens, which is like a huge forest in New Jersey. It's where the Jersey Devil is
cool.
said to live.
Ah,
Yeah.
I was
Allegedly.
like, that sounds really familiar. Why do I know it?
So, you know, stuff like that. And then also actually, I guess it was 2 Halloweens ago, we did a special trip to Penhurst, Penhurst State College in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, and we did like a paranormal investigation there, and that was really neat. We do run a Patreon series too, so we did a whole series on that for when we went to Halloween Horror Nights down in Orlando, and we covered like all the special houses they had down there. So we do have fun with it. You know, it's wherever we hear may have some ghosts. That's where we get our
That's-
info from. So
That's
Awesome.
awesome.
What
Yeah.
has been your guys' favorite episode that you've done?
Ooh,
gosh.
okay. I think I know mine right away. I like when we cover like multiple places in one episode, sort of. And we've only done that for a couple. So the college episode where we covered like
That was
different haunted
cool.
colleges, I thought was super fun. I feel like my like greatest memory, it was like when we lived together, we were like on our apartment couch and we were like learning about Coley the donkey. It's horrible now. I like don't remember the details, even though like I say it was such a good memory. It was like this donkey,
You're like,
and
that's
he
the
like
one.
he worked at the college. He was like a professor. No, I'm just kidding. He was like, I don't really know what he I don't know what he did. He kind of like carried things around, and then after he died, they like turned him into like a taxidermied, which is like a little kind of freaky, and they like displayed him, but they said that
Wow.
his ghost would like walk around like making donkey noise.
Oh my
Am I
gosh,
getting
that's
that right, Mary
awesome.
Kate?
yeah, no, you got it.
That's amazing. So fun.
Yeah. I have so many favorite episodes. I really liked the one that we did on the Pine Barrens just because and I've said this so many times on our podcast, but I had like a severe fear of the Jersey Devil when I was a kid. Like I always thought I was gonna see him up and about, in
I
suburban
bet.
Jersey. And so that one was really fun. That was, I think, our second ever episode that we did. And then I really enjoyed we did like a brief series on the Warrens, like Ed and Lorraine Warren and like some of the places that they were involved with on the East Coast, which is funny because they were actually involved with the Amityville house.
Amityville.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect tie-in.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
All right.
so fun.
That's a lot of fun.
I'm a huge ghost person, so I'm like, yes. I went to school in Northern Arizona University, and we had like 3 or 4 different ghosts, like the all-females dorm. Like there's a girl and the ghost who would lock girls in the bathroom. And so like wouldn't let them out of the bathroom.
Oh
and
that's
then
rude.
my freshman I know. And then my freshman dorm, we had it was a ghost. Well, okay, so it's not like a famous ghost, but my friend, her dorm was right next to the dorm room that was cemented shut because someone way when the school was first like made had hung herself because her boyfriend went off to war. And so she was so sad and so hung herself. And they didn't want anyone. They were like, okay, it's haunted now. So cemented the door shut. And my friend lived in the dorm next to it, and she would hear like scratches in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
She's like, it's coming from that room.
That's
well,
so,
if I feel like
terrifying.
cementing it off is only going to make it more haunted, personally.
Right.
I
You're
agree.
keeping it in that room.
Yeah. Or like there's critters that are like trying to get out.
That could be it too.
Or a mixture of two.
Oh my gosh, definitely. Oh my gosh. All right.
Okay,
are we ready?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Ready to go, yeah.
All right. So we have our synopsis. Now, this is a true story. So this is not like one of our normal
book to
books
movie
that we do.
Comparison, yeah.
And so this should be interesting. So it's a chiller about a family who are terrorized by supernatural forces when they move into a new house in New York State, which was the scene of recent mass killings and the home of an 18th century Satanist. So you guys have you done this story on your podcast?
We did. We covered this
Yeah.
in a pretty extensive series just because there's so much to cover here.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
one of the famous
absolutely.
hauntings in American history. So
Yes.
this was in depth.
All right. So then you'll be able to be like, actually, that's not what really happened. So you'll be able to correct us as we go.
Honestly, I think this movie is probably one of my like movies that kickstarted my like, yes, I love ghosts. This is such a good story. And then recently I got big into My Favorite Murder and they covered this. So then this time when I read the book and watched the movie, I kind of had background knowledge and I was like, what the heck is this?
It's so different. Yeah. This was my first ever horror movie I ever watched. It was a Halloween party. Yeah. And this was Ryan Reynolds. That's where I was introduced to him.
Wait. Okay, I guess there's 2 versions of the movie. I've only seen the old one.
There's like
I was like
the old one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I watched the old one, which I was like Ryan Reynolds.
You're like, he's not.
No, that'll be interesting to hear how different
from that one it is. Yeah, because the Ryan Reynolds one is like,
it like doesn't even match at all. So that'll be interesting.
Hollywood
eyes. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so we have our author Jay Anson. Our director of the Ryan Reynolds one was Andrew Douglas. The screenplay writer was Scott Corse, and I did the audiobook read, and it's Ray Porter, and he read it like a.
Oh, I actually listened to the audiobook too. I think he was really boring.
Yeah, I did too. That would have been a better one to read myself.
Yeah, it really was. I was like, wow, you're not spicing it up in any way. It felt very anecdotal.
Yeah, it felt like a research
Paper.
Which I mean, I guess
Like, I feel like I should
technically
be scared of this, but your voice is making me
Yeah.
not scared.
Exactly. I was like, wait, what? Oh my gosh.
Okay, so our book came out September 13th, 1977, and the Ryan Reynolds one came out April 15th, 2005. So that's 28 years difference.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty big difference compared to most of ours.
Yeah.
And which first did you read or watch?
I watched it first.
I watched it first.
How about you ladies?
I read the book first.
Oh,
Really?
Allie. Wow. I didn't even know it was a book.
I know. Way back when.
Yeah.
I
sorry,
watched.
Sam.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say I watched it only. I have not read the
There
book.
we go.
But
Okay.
Mary Kate has given me all the detail. I feel as if I've read it.
Honestly,
You've also done several podcasts on it. So
yeah,
I feel like you'll know more
you're
than
gonna
the
know
book
more than
is.
us.
You give me too
So.
much credit.
You're good. All right. And what are your initial thoughts of the story? Just the haunting in general, I guess, because it's a true story.
I guess my initial thoughts were that it was so like I had always grown up, I as a kid like hated horror movies. So whenever like my dad would pop this on the TV, I'd be like, I'm out of here. I'm not watching it. Don't want to know anything about it. So I just knew that there was like a famous scene with flies, and that's all I knew about it. And then when Sam and I started this podcast, we were figuring like, okay, this might be a better one to save for like when we get into like our true on season, like the spooky seasons. We were figuring, this is definitely gonna be a multi-part episode, right? I think it ended up being what, 4 parts?
Yeah,
Wow.
So
it was a
Wow.
lot.
it was a lot of information to cover, including like the DeFeo murders and everything.
Yeah.
So when I read the book, I guess I was so astounded by, whether or not you believe this actually happened, the amount of detail that went into this book and like the specific dates and, all these weird occurrences that they have like actual documentation of. I was so blown away because I was under the impression that this was a very cheesy horror movie, and it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like having read the book first, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the movie,
Oh,
but my initial thoughts were like I was blown out of the water by this whole story.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not answering our own question, but I just thought of this. Have you guys listened to the Very Scary People podcast about Amityville?
I haven't,
I don't
no.
think so.
Oh, that one's really good too. It's why can't I think of the Wahlberg brother? It's not Mark. Donnie Wahlberg is the host of it because that's where they grew up. And he actually talks to people who knew the family.
Oh.
Yeah, it's one
all
of
right, I
my
gotta listen to that.
favorite. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I listened to that podcast after I read the book for this, and that made me dislike the book a little. Oh wow, I'm just
the way they answered it.
But I was like, I wish I had this information going into watching the movie too, because then it just opened up so much more that I was like, wait, what is the movie even doing?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I also love like the fact that he went and found people who knew the family and was like, talk to me about this.
A little
That's
investigative
sick.
journalism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
First and secondhand accounts. Yeah, I would say I've only seen the older version. So like MK said, yes, it's like definitely like it's so cheesy, which I actually prefer in a way because I do get a little bit freaked out if the horror movie is like too modern. You know what I mean? So I like enjoyed when they were doing like there was the one part where they were like in the basement and he's like digging up the bricks and stuff and like he sees a vision of the murderer guy and it's like so cheesy looking and I was like I actually appreciate that. It was good. Yeah, and so like it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like kitschy in a way, but I thought that I think the actual story itself like actually really freaks me out. So it was interesting to watch it in a light that made it like not as scary, not as scary.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the movie's good, but it's like it is what it is. You can't go in being like this is going to be like a masterpiece. Like you just have to go in and being like this will be fun.
it's got that same like aspect of like hokiness that like a lot of horror movies from like the 70s and 80s have. So
Yeah.
if you go in expecting like to have like cheesy fun, you'll enjoy this movie a lot better than if you're like, all right, this is gonna be like a true like documentary on what actually happened to the Lutz family. Like it's,
It's
it's fun.
true.
That's awesome. So I haven't seen the original one. Have you seen the original one?
I saw it a long time ago. After I first watched the Ryan Reynolds version, I was like, oh, this is an old movie. I should go watch that one.
Interesting. So, MK, have you seen the Ryan Reynolds one or only the original?
I've seen both movies and I've read
Okay.
the book. So
Okay. All right. Hey, we have a professional over here. Done all the
You flatter
aspects
me.
of it.
So I assume Ryan Reynolds was the dad in the.
Yeah. He was
Okay.
George. Mhm.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
very
Breaking out of his
different.
typecast here.
Yes. And this was the first time I saw him. I was like, oh
I
my.
know. This was like, I think it was
one of his
after
breakout roles.
it was after Just Friends.
Yeah.
And what's the one about? Is it called Serving or Waiting? I don't know. It's like he works in a diner.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. I've seen that one.
Yeah. But I think it was him trying to break out of the like heartthrob.
But it didn't work. He was quite handsome in this one too.
He was too hard. Yeah, no one, he was not a believable dad.
Yeah, no.
It didn't help that he came out with like this 6-pack like washboard abs too.
Exactly.
Every time.
Oh my gosh. This is not how I pictured George.
No.
Oh my gosh.
All right. And Brie, why did we pick this
Well,
story?
I picked this one specifically because I wanted to have you lovely ladies on with us, and I figured this was right up your guys' alley. Yeah.
You were correct.
100%.
Awesome. Okay, so we have some fun facts about, well, it's about the Ryan Reynolds movie. So sorry. Take a listen. So MGM claimed that the remake was based on new information on, even though it's extremely different. Sorry, I tend to talk to myself in my head as I'm reading. It's not great for podcasting. I'm sorry. Based on new information uncovered during the research of the original events, but George Lutz later claimed that nobody ever spoke to him or his family about this project.
Uh-oh.
And when he initially heard it was underway, his attorney contacted the studio to find out what they had in the planning stages and to express the Lutz's belief that they didn't have the right to proceed with his input. 3 letters were sent and none were acknowledged. In June 2004, the studio filed a motion for declaratory relief in federal court, insisting they had the right to do a remake, and the Lutz countersued, citing violations of the original contract, and they had continued through the years following the release of the movie. The case remained unsolved when Lutz died May 8th, 2006.
No.
That's so
Longest fun fact
unsatisfying.
I've ever done.
That's crazy.
Way to give us a fun fact right off the bat. That's like sad ending.
And then he died.
How long ago?
And nothing happened.
He died and nothing happened. Studio got away with it.
Sorry, that was the longest fun fact I've ever done in my life, too. Okay. Number 2. Just before shooting began, the body of a fisherman who had been murdered washed upon the bank of the river right near the main house.
Oh no.
Wow.
Good.
That's
wording.
crazy.
Yeah, that's talk about bad omens.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
All right, number 3, Chloe Grace Moretz did most of her own stunts despite only being 8 years old.
Oh, dang.
Whoa, that's young.
That's
young.
Yeah.
Especially
kinda
for
crazy.
stunts, yeah.
You have to walk on like a roof and everything.
Yeah, a roof that's like slanted.
All right, number 4. Just as with the original movie, the name of the Lutz children had to be changed to protect their identities. Makes sense.
Sense, yeah.
And number 5. During filming, many cast and crew members began waking up at 3:15 a.m., the same time as the murders.
I don't like that.
That would be weird.
I'd be like, I'm done. I'm out. Goodbye.
Yep.
File for
Oh.
unemployment that day.
Yes.
Ew,
So
that's so
I have
creepy.
to ask. You two both have said how horror movies are not your favorite thing. How did you get into a podcast where you focus on horror things?
Ask.
Mary Kate,
Um,
that one's for
yeah.
you.
It's kind of a funny story, actually. So we used to live together, and I was like a year out of college. Sam was 2 years out of college, and we moved into an apartment together. And it was like kind of like, fate had aligned. And we would come home from work every day, and we'd be like, oh, okay, like, did you listen to we were big true crime podcast girls.
Mhm.
So I'd come home and I'd be like, oh, did you listen to this new Crime Junkie episode or this new Morbid episode? And we just got like we started talking and we were like, you know what? We could like just record these conversations and we could podcast of our own, which I'm sure is how 99% of the podcasts out there are started. But we were like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should do a true crime podcast. And then we were like, you know what? That's like the market is very saturated right now with true crime podcasts, and like we probably
also
need
kind
like
of like
a little something.
Yeah, it's like you have to be careful. Yeah, there's like I feel like there's such a fine line with like the true crime stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where
Mhm.
Yes.
entertainment versus like
Definitely.
exploitation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to be careful with like the victims and everything, and being super respectful, but also like telling the tale as it went. So we were like, okay, well, let's find something that like makes us stand out a little bit from the other podcasts. We were like, okay, what if we did one like completely on the paranormal side of things? Because we'd gone on like different ghost tours, and like it's always something that's been like interesting, but
Our family has we've always done ghost tours. Like it's a thing that we do
yeah.
Oh, I
when
love
we're
it.
and like no matter where we are.
Yeah. So that's
amazing.
how we decided it. Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys remind me of Only Murders in the Building. Is it like
Oh.
that Hulu show where you connected on a podcast about true
Yes,
crime and then you're
yes.
like,
What a
"Let's make
compliment.
podcast."
Thank you.
I know that I am Martin Short, so thank you.
I was just about to say you can be Martin Short, I'll be Steve Martin.
Okay, I think that fits.
That's amazing.
One of you guys can be Selena, and then the other person
All
can
right.
There's only really three.
Yeah,
You guys can
yeah.
both be Selena.
We'll be
Selena.
Selena together.
Duo Selena.
Awesome.
I do want to know, have you guys encountered ghosts?
I can't say like definitively.
Mhm.
We did have a lot of really weird experiences when we went to Penhurst. And just like a lot of weird, unexplainable things. And they had like different ghost hunting instruments
Equipment.
that we talked a little bit on the podcast about, but I can't say like I've ever definitively seen one, but I've definitely had like a weird creepy feeling, like especially in like some like houses like or apartments. When I moved into like my family's current house, my dad was like convinced that it was haunted just because like everything kept going wrong. So like definitely had some like experiences that may have been paranormal, but I've never personally seen a ghost.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, the same thing. I've definitely gotten like spooky feelings, but I think everyone does. I would say I've never knowingly experienced a ghost or a spirit or anything like that, but I have had dreams of like my deceased grandmother, but I'm like that could literally just be a dream. Like how are we to know?
Exactly.
You know? So I'm like,
those are
the
some
answer
hard-
is I don't know. What about you guys?
Yeah.
I have not.
I actually at my school, like the
scratching.
The scratching. Actually, mine is a little bit creepier, but I've had a few different things, but like that actually, oh man, there's actually I forgot. Me and my roommate, we said that we had a ghost roommate living with us because
you just forget that.
no, I was gonna tell a completely different story, but we like it started with I would be sitting at my desk working on like a paper or something, and my laptop would be like 10% battery, charge me, and I would go and plug it in, and it was a plug that was like tight. It wasn't loose or anything.
Mhm.
And then I'd get back to work. Maybe 10 minutes later, it would be like, computer battery 10% dead. Please charge me. And I'd be like, I have you
I
plugged in. And
am.
I would look, it would be unplugged. And I'd be like, okay, I really just plugged that in. And then it
That is
happened
so
with
weird.
our toaster, with our TV. And then one night we had like gone and done what we called a family dinner with some of our friends. Me and our friends went to a movie. She had gone back to the room and she texted me halfway through the movie, "Hey, are you home?" And I was like, I get out of the movie not even thinking about it. I'm like, no, I was at the movie. You knew I was at the movie. Why are you texting me? And then she told me the next day, she was like, I didn't want to get into details why I asked because I know you and I knew you would be freaked to come home to me asleep. But she, as she was going to bed, had heard someone come into our dorm and then walk around and like shuffle in our cupboards. And we had a dorm where like we had a kitchen and a living room and then a doorway to the bedroom, and the door was shut because she was asleep or trying to go to sleep. And then she saw a shadow under the door walk back and forth and then just stop and stand there.
How do you go to sleep after that?
Right? She probably had to convince herself that you had been home. Like,
She told
Yeah.
me, she was like, her
That's what
thought
I would
process
do.
was,
Yeah.
if it's
Oh,
here to get
that's-
me, it's here to get me. I might as well just go to sleep.
that's
Oh my
scary.
God. That is
That's
a-
freaky.
Scary. Yeah.
But the one that I was gonna say was the freshman dorm. Me and my freshman roommate, we had counted the windows to find the cemented in room. And literally, as I was counting, I sat there and I was watching it and I like counted 3 or 4 times. And then I saw someone move the blinds and like stare out the window and like stare at me. And I was like, ah, ah.
And then you
And
look
you're
back and they're just gone.
No, I'm sure
Oh
I like
my
even
God.
talked to, because my freshman roommate was not a believer. It was like, ghosts aren't real. And then after this, I was like, did you see that, Jessica? And she was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, did we count right? Is that how many it is? And then we like had our friend who was the neighbor come out and wave to us, and we were like, that was the room. So
that
got a
That's
is
few
so
things.
freaky.
you're pretty
That's
honestly,
creepy.
all things considered, you're pretty calm about that. That is
I know.
I would be at the housing department the next day.
But I need to be moved.
Yes.
That's
No way.
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, instead we
that's
just like
wild.
left and went and got lunch.
You're like, thanks, good day. All right, let's go.
Your frontal lobe had not
gosh.
developed yet, so I can't
Yes.
blame you.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
It's too
Uh,
funny.
Okay. Are
Yeah.
we ready to do some comparisons?
I think so.
Okay, let's do it.
Ready?
And then you'll be able to help us to be like, actually, this is what really happened if I screw up
Technically.
the book and everything.
Yeah. I have my notes, but if you guys are like more vehement about it, go for it. It's all
Yeah.
you.
Please type in whenever you want. All
Sounds
right. So the
good.
book kicks off with the author talking about religion beliefs and science. And when it all comes to horror, it was just like a little intro about this is fun. This is what it means.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
doesn't happen in the movie.
No.
Okay.
The movie's like, it's a horror movie. Let's
Yes.
go.
So then we have, let me know if I did this right. A summary of the Lutz, and they did like a whole very quick summary. Like they moved into a house, the Catholic Church and police got involved. The things were being thrown across the room. There's a secret room that wasn't on the blueprints. They're hearing voices and eventually moved out. They gave us like the whole story in one chapter at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
they obviously do not do that in the movie.
And that would be such a weird way to start a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because it's what
Yeah.
happened.
But let's dive in.
Yeah. But now we get to the beginning of the movie, probably. Yeah. We're following the Lutz, Kathy and George, and they're touring a house, and it's like ridiculously good priced. Eventually the realtor is like, okay, so this is the demon house that everybody has heard about, and that's why it's so cheap. But they tell him a guy would shot his family here and played it insane, and George wanted to give his wife the best house he could, though, and this was it. So they moved in, and I'm like, what?
Would
I
you
know.
guys ever move into this house?
Never.
No.
Oh
No.
my gosh.
Me with my ghost experiences, no.
I mean,
You
it was
gotta
a
draw
really
the
pretty
line
house,
somewhere.
but
It's been
man,
tough
no
to come
thanks.
back.
The one that unplugs my laptop and toaster, I'm fine with. This ghost, no.
Electricity hating ghosts are
Yes.
It was probably an Amish ghost.
Probably.
Gosh.
Makes sense.
Well, in the movie, we start with the Defoe murders. So we get the backstory on kind of like the haunting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
This part pretty much happens.
yeah.
They had a priest come over to do a blessing on the house. And as he's leaving, he hears "get out" yelled behind him. And he's like, okay. And he goes home. And weird stuff starts happening with the Lutz family too. Like their dog starts almost getting strangled because he jumps over the fence because he got spooked by something. And this was on December 18th. And it took a total of 28 days before they moved out.
That's what blows my mind. I'm like, it took you 28 days to finally like be like, I should leave.
Yeah, I'd leave after day one. I'm sorry.
Too long.
First time I was like, this seems off.
Yes.
Uh,
We didn't ask, would you guys have moved into this house?
oh yeah.
No, I'm gonna say absolutely not. No, that would freak me out too much.
Mhm.
I am also gonna say no. However, I do sort of see why they stayed for like the 28 days in a way, because I'm like, if you put all your money
That's
into
actually
this house,
a good point.
right? And then you're like I can see them being like, oh my gosh, like maybe I'm just being ridiculous. I mean, like the things that happen,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, how do you explain that away? But
Mhm.
it's kind of like you can see where they would be like, no, like let's just try to stick it out and stuff. And then they get to a point where they're like, okay, this is just not gonna work, especially in today's economy.
I know, definitely.
Yeah, that's very true. So in the Ryan Reynolds version of the movie, I felt like they made Jodie too much of a character, like this being that was there in presence rather than
A pig.
like
She was a person in the movie, not a pig.
yeah.
Does she pop up already? She does at the very beginning of the movie. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't get her for a while in the story yet.
No.
Okay.
Also, my next note is the book is more facts based than character building, whereas in the movie it was just like they obviously had to, show the husband and wife dynamic, show the husband and the stepkids dynamic and all that. So, I guess I also have a note that says in the movie, the real estate person just like right off the bat tells them about the murder, whereas the family wanted to know like, hey, why is this so cheap? Like, what's the story behind this?
Right. So she let them know.
Yeah. Instead, she's like, welcome in. This is where everything happened.
Yeah. So we're in the book, and George is starting to act pretty rude to the kids. He would get irritated with them really easily, and Kathy's shocked because he's never like this. But by the end of the night, too, she also was getting irritated. The kids broke something in the playroom, and she went and beat them with a strap. So it's 1977.
Yeah.
And George is
Oh,
always
I thought you were saying this was happening in the movie. I was like, oh my God.
no.
I was like, whoa, that didn't happen in my
I need
version.
to go watch that one.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
According to the book, Kathy's beating her kids.
Here's a difference here.
Yes. And it is always freezing in the house.
So the freezing thing happens, but right now the Jody ghost is scaring George.
Okay.
Yeah, because Jody is very apparent right off the bat. Just like, hey,
Not a pig. I think that was my biggest like shock. I was like, wait, because I was watched the movie first. So I'm like, and then I find out Jody's a pig, and I'm like, what?
Like, what do you mean?
But I know this Jody.
Yes. Creepy little girl. That's how all horror movies are. Oh,
which is funny because pigs can be scary too. Pigs are like satanic and all of that. Like, why did they change that?
We had so much to say about the Jody being a pig. Like, I literally, I had nightmares about like a pig like being in my window. The fact that they changed it from a pig to like a little girl, like don't get me wrong, I love a good like spooky little girl trope in a
Yeah.
horror movie. The pig is objectively so much scarier,
Yeah.
like I think.
Yeah.
1,000 times.
I agree.
Yes.
I have quite a few notes on Jody not being a pig. Hit a nerve.
Okay, so the kids in the book, the kids are in the bathroom and they're calling their mom because the toilet is gross and black and their toys are gross and black and the parents' room smells horrible. They begin to air it out and there's hundreds of flies in this upstairs window. And that night, George wakes up at exactly 3:15 and sees that the door is broken off its hinges.
So there's no playroom in the Ryan Reynolds version of the movie. So I was like, this is like the main spot where a
All
lot
this
of this
stuff
happens.
happens.
Yeah.
Why would they take that out? That's so weird.
Yeah.
I know. It really, I have a degree in film, and sometimes I can like piece together, like, okay, they made this change because of this, or like just feasibly it makes sense for this. But I'm like, you could have built a whole extra room. What was the point here? And you could have made Jody a pig.
The thing is, like, you're not just
Why?
changing like a made up story. This is like
Someone's
happened.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so interesting. Don't know. Oh, okay. Well, George had someone come over to fix the door, and they let him know that, hey, I had to fix the door down by the boathouse from another family who lived here. And Missy starts to ask about angels and if they can talk to you, which is really odd. She's not normally talking like this. Kathy goes to check on the boys' room and she smells that horrible smell again and sees that the crucifix is upside down.
Yeah, that kind of happened.
Mhm.
So far, the only thing that.
Yeah.
Check.
All right.
Yeah.
And okay. So then I like this part that in the book they focused on the priest a lot more, the father a lot more than they did. He was like once or twice in the movie.
Yeah, he wasn't helpful at all. Like,
so the father can get over the eerie feeling he felt at the house. He was debating whether to call the Lutz and let them know, but he ended up getting really sick. So he had a fever of 104 and he was ordered to stay in bed. So he called from his bed to tell them, do not go upstairs where all the flies are. But before he could explain why, the line got fuzzy and they had to hang up. He calls again, but it won't ring. George tries to call, but it won't go through. That was just a nightmare.
my next note is George is supposed to see a pig behind the girl, not Jody.
Wow, you were very upset.
I really was. Brought this up way too many times. Also, at this point in the movie, George and Kathy have kind of started talking about their experiences and like, oh, this place is kind of weird. Whereas in the book, they did what any normal person would do, where it's like, oh, maybe I'm just like making this up. Maybe it's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Also, nothing super
Weird has happened.
other than like flies and smells. And
Mhm.
the crucifix was the first thing that I would be like,
Oh,
Yeah.
heck no,
Let's
yeah. I'm out of there. As soon as that happens, I'm out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh man. And so with doing your research, does the book match pretty well to all the research that you did with this story? Seeing as
So
it's supposed to.
I would hope.
yeah. So the book is like a very it's I don't want to say a fictionalized recount of everything that happened, but it's like a dramatized recount of everything that happened. So there were certain like things that happened in real life that also like happened in the book, but there's a couple of things in the book, and I definitely don't want to like jump ahead of you guys,
Yeah.
but like the crucifix, like they're not actually sure if that happened like in the house. It's just like a really creepy detail. And
Ah.
again, like so the book I don't know if you guys are going to get into this at all, but the book is actually based off a series of recorded interviews between Jay Anson and Kathy Lutz. So
Okay.
it's kind of like from her mouth to like the published page. So it is pretty much like as much of a first-hand account of this whole story that you're gonna get, besides like investigators going in and being like, okay, well, there was actually like a weird room and down in the basement, so like that happened, but we'll never know like if there was actually, a pig's face in the playroom window. So it's a lot of this stuff is like it does hold true to the account that at least the Lutz claim to have happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know. I feel like ghost stories in general are hard because
Yeah.
sometimes when you experience it, you might end up like, oh my gosh, there was an 8-foot tall donkey chasing after me.
Yeah. And then it's like even harder when you translate it into the movie because here's this book that's like been based off of interviews, that's based off of like likely embellished stories. And then that book is being adapted into a movie, which then was adapted into another movie. So it's like it's being like passed down, like that game Telephone where like yeah, you start with one word and then by the time it on the entire table, it's like a completely different word. That's kind of what I feel like might have happened with this story a little bit, but it is so entertaining nonetheless.
Yes. Okay. I can see that. Well, feel free to jump in and be like, actually, the truth is, whenever something comes up. Okay. So in the story, we have Kathy's mom comes over and her brother, and they come over for an early Christmas and they celebrate, but they didn't bring the kids a bunch of presents, and they were very audibly upset about that. And George is yelling at the kids, and then the window upstairs is open and flies are back, and he's complaining about how it's freezing in the house. And they hear a loud crack, and they go check the boathouse. And a police officer is watching all of this because he's on patrol, and he's just like, it's getting a little weird over there.
That did not happen in the movie.
Okay, you're right. None of it. Okay. And now back to the book. George wakes up at 3:15 again and he checks the boathouse and it's locked, but he saw Missy standing in her window and a pig is behind her. Oh, your note jumped ahead. And she ran to check on her, but she's asleep. And Kathy woke up screaming because she had a dream she was shot in the head, which is how the wife died from the Defoe family, but that was never released information.
Spooky.
Yeah, and that is actually a recorded thing that happened was like none of the information the DeFeo murders were released, but when Kathy ended up talking to like I don't think they were police officers, but they had some sort of affiliation with law enforcement when she goes to check the records, they were like, how do you know all this? Because it was never released to the public. So definitely there was some sort of like, whether it be paranormal or like mother's intuition, like she definitely was going through something in that house. And she got glimpses of like what actually happened during the DeFeo like family annihilation.
Wow. I couldn't even imagine.
Creepy stuff. That's so creepy.
I wouldn't.
That'd be so depressing too.
That's when I would want to leave.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
I can't have this dreams like
All right. So Christmas now happens and they couldn't contact the father because they were starting to be like, this is kind of odd. And Kathy went to buy wood, but she was getting mad at George. They were bickering and she's like, you bring it in yourself. And she goes inside and she went to talk to her kids and Missy, and she said that Missy was talking to Jody, who's a pig. And
I think we might have lost Sam.
She's like, this is boring.
Yeah, I'm done.
She'll hop back on, I'm sure.
Sometimes it's great.
The ghosts got her apparently.
Oh my god.
She said she's working on joining. She has to restart her Wi-Fi.
Okay.
My Amish
So you guys can keep going.
So the boys wanted to go to bed. They never want to go to bed. And so everybody's acting very different. And the father's fever was getting worse.
So this kind of happened, except for, again, Jody is not a pig.
Yeah, and the kids were just everyone was acting a little different, and we didn't really know anything about the father.
Well,
right?
one of my notes is that George is being a dick in the movie. Like I never expected him. Like he gets mean in the book, but not quite as mean as he does in the movie. Hey, she's back.
Almost. Yeah, no, I feel like that.
What did I miss? I literally thought everyone was. I for like a good like maybe 2 or 3 seconds, I thought that Mary Kate like had stopped talking and was like thinking about what to say next, and I was like, "This is getting weird." And then I realized it was me.
It was a dramatic pause.
Finish your thought.
Way. I was like,
we were saying the ghost kicked you off. So
my gosh,
Amish
don't
ghost found you.
That's so
Literally.
Oh, now my dogs are freaking out too.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
but yeah, he was. They made him the villain in the movie. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. He was the villain, not the house, and not the haunting of the house.
It was George.
Yeah,
which was not accurate.
No, it's kind of sad.
It is really sad. It's also really funny to see the difference between like he's definitely portrayed as like the family, like he gets affected by the haunting in the book, but he's not a bad guy in the book. He's just trying to protect his family. And also that's how he's portrayed like most of the time in the 1979 version. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll tell you about that in a little bit, except for like one specific instance where we're like, oh, hold on. But the 2005 version, like he's a jerk.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, wow. They really took this character and was just like, all right, you're the one that's getting affected by it.
Yeah,
you're the one. Actually, no one else. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I didn't mean to cut you off. So actually, a while after the movie was released, one of the Lutz sons came out and they were like, you know what, he actually was like not a good father. He was like super hard to live with. He was definitely had I don't want to say like had his demons because like
because of
you
the
know
movie.
yeah. I don't think they were like actual demons, but like it was, you know, he was haunted by something. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Interesting.
Maybe the screenplay writer had some intuition there.
Yeah, maybe. The new information that they gave.
Yeah,
that was not given.
Yeah. Okay. So in the book, George continued to wake up at 3:15, and Harry, the dog, normally always wakes up at noises, but he has not been doing so well unless George calls him. He's been sleeping a lot. And George is getting horrible diarrhea. Father still isn't feeling good. And Kathy, they're getting ready for Kathy's brother's wedding, and he left $1,500 there to keep safe, but all of a sudden it's gone. And Kathy's crying because she's freaking out. And George is like, don't worry, you know, we'll figure it out. And then he also has the urge that he wants to sleep with her as she's sobbing. And then they go off to the wedding. Yeah.
I know.
I know. That's an interesting fact to add to that story. Why not?
Let's do it.
I want to steal $1,500 from someone in my family and then be like, it was the ghost, and just like, you can't fall for it.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in the movie.
Nope, not at all.
No.
Okay. So George is, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go.
Also, I want to know why they tell us like the details of George getting really bad sick. I'm like, I don't need to know that he's in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, just say
he got little much. Also, I thought something that was like super interesting that they didn't include in the book, but both movies had it, was the fact that they left the kids at home when they went to the wedding and they hired a babysitter. So in like the book I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine, because I just realized I don't think she's even got the babysitter part in her notes. So
I don't.
There's no babysitter in the book. Yeah. So it is so weird that was like dramatized into the 1979 version, and then they copied it over into the 2005 version, was like no record. I think in the book and in real life, the whole family went to the wedding, and that was like a whole big thing because they were
Well,
feeling sick.
that
They
would
had to
make
leave
sense.
early, Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Plus, like, what babysitter would actually tell children this murder story
like they do in the
knows?
movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I know you're young and dumb when you're a babysitter, but you should know better than to be like, hey, children, I'm gonna scare you before bed.
Where'd they find this
Yeah.
babysitter?
It's just more
Yeah,
work for yourself if you're the babysitter and they're not going to bed.
Exactly.
So
I
Yeah,
know,
seriously, it's true.
exactly.
I know. But then in the Ryan Reynolds version, she gets what's coming for her for that.
She sure does. She
Does
does.
she get it? Does she get murked?
I think actually we're here now, aren't they? At the
Yeah,
This would be
this
it.
is
So
exactly where we're at.
explain it all.
She doesn't really get murked, but like the demon basically comes for her and basically like
He locks her in a closet.
yeah. And
Oh yes.
her.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she ends up leaving the house on a stretcher. So
Yeah. Oh man.
oh, and then another thing
Mhm.
in the movie that's different is now the kids are basically like, this house is bad. We need to leave. Whereas I feel like in the book, they're kids. And so they're not going to be like, they know that it's weird, but they're not like, oh, let's leave. It was the
Yeah.
parents.
Or if they
They're not that
wanted
smart.
to leave, it was not
It was
told
that's
in the
true.
book. So yeah. I don't know. My kids would be like, we need to get out of here.
Yeah, your kids would.
Yeah. Okay. So George is still feeling super sick at the wedding. And right when he entered the church, that's when he started feeling nauseous. And they paid for the wedding with $500 cash and two $500 checks that he had to go get situated. After the wedding, Kathy and George slept together, and Kathy woke up in a dream with the Defoe wife having slept with a secret lover, which again was confirmed true. And
which would again be so weird. Like I would be like, what just happened?
she's
So
like having
freaky.
a dream of other people sleeping together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That would be odd. That would be odd.
I would be like, what am I? What did I eat before bed?
What
Who are
is
these
happening?
people?
Exactly.
Perry is still sleeping, and George is like, okay, I gotta take you to the vet. And Kathy's aunt comes over, and she used to be a nun. She would not go in the sewing room. It was freezing in the
Or
house.
the playroom.
Or the playroom.
That does not exist in the movie.
Yeah. It was freezing in the house from the moment she entered, and she only stayed for a half hour. And she's like, I'm getting out of this place. That would be a sign right there. I'd be like, oh my gosh, my nun aunt doesn't want to stay here. We gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
The boys made a friend named Bobby, and he wouldn't go into the playroom. He wanted to stay downstairs and play.
And
And
another, I'm a firm believer that children also like have what the third eye or they can see through the veil or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like my one time I was hanging out with my friend's little sister and like we were 13 and she was 1. So we must have been 12. We were 12, she was 1. And we were hanging out in my friend's room and she had a door that went up to her attic. And we were hanging out watching TV with this baby and the baby just like stopped, turned and looked at the attic door and then pointed and went, man. I was like,
Oh
what's
no.
going on?
At least the
You know
baby
what
didn't
part-
seem scared.
no, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
she seemed totally like chill with it.
At least
you
she
know
wasn't like
what?
pig.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah. I would have been like, bye. I'm out.
You know when like cartoon characters run so fast that their legs are like a full circle? That would have been me just out of the
Yeah.
room. No.
So they went downstairs, put groceries away, and this is when they found the red room that was smelled like blood, and it was behind a plywood door in the or not door, wall in the basement. And George saw this bearded faced man in the room.
This is basically when the movie starts just going haywire because now the demon's basically just coming for George and George is just getting angrier and angrier and then deciding that he needs to kill his family.
Yep. Escalated quickly.
Uh-huh.
The logical solution.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Obviously.
So the father had the police officers over that was in charge of their case, or just watching the house, I guess. And the police, correct me if I'm wrong. What was the police? Why did the father call the police officer over? My brain is forgetting that detail. Do you guys remember? I know it was a long time ago. Now I'm putting you on
I
the
think
spot.
it was,
Sorry.
wasn't it because the garage door was off the hinges and he
Oh,
wanted to
you're
see if anyone
right.
was into the house?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
Plus, isn't this at this point he's also been calling and he can't get through? So it's kind of like a wellness check almost, like, hey,
yeah, yep,
I
definitely.
can't get a hold of them and I want to talk to them.
Okay. So, but the police officer gave very minimal details because all of a sudden he started feeling really sick. And so then we jump to George and he's in a bar getting a drink and the bartender's like, hey, you look just like the Defoe guy. And thank you. And he's like, oh, thanks, great. He's like, that's the house I'm living in. And
I would
not exactly
life
a
if someone
compliment.
said that to me. I'd be like,
yeah, for real.
oh, thanks.
So Kathy feels like this lion statue that George got her is about to attack her. So she moves because out of there because she sees it move. And she's like, I'm not going back in the kitchen either, though, because I feel a presence in the kitchen.
What's funny is that part we read The Shining, and that part reminds me of the Shining lion hedges that move. Yep, so when I read that, I was like, ooh, The Shining. Yes.
So
yeah, I never made that
actually,
connection.
It's so funny that you say that because that's one of the examples in the book that people like naysayers are like, okay, well, obviously that was influenced by The Shining. So people are like, oh, that definitely didn't happen. But it's The Shining was kind of like, it wasn't like new, but it was like newer at the time. And so they were like, okay, that part of the story is definitely influenced by The Shining. So it's so funny you brought that up.
Yep. So both the father and George keep getting this same phone call at the same time. It's all staticky. And then the father's getting sick again. And George trips over this lion because all of a sudden it's in the middle of the room for some reason.
Yeah. In the movie now, Mom and Chelsea are going up on the roof to get away from the dad. And this is now when we know that Chloe Grace Moretz was doing her own roof stunt.
Yes.
I wonder if the mom actor, I can't think of her name right now, but I wonder if she had a stunt double doing her stuff as the 8-year-olds up there, like
doing her own thing.
8-year-olds like, let me go. They're feral anyway, 8-year-olds, so just let her go.
Let her rock.
So Kathy patches George up because he has bite marks all over him. And George goes to work the next day, gets those checks situated for that wedding. And he then goes to the library and starts doing research. He found out all the murders happened at 3:15 a.m. Everyone died on their stomachs. And the theory is that the murders happened for a $200,000 life insurance and a box of money somewhere in the parents' room. Or in the house. In the parents' room? In the house. Somewhere in there. On the way home, his tire almost fell off, and the father is super sick and now is getting sores all over his hands.
Yeah.
He's not in good shape.
No, not at all.
I really wish they showed this. Like, I really wish the father was actually like a prominent character in the movie.
He is in the 1979 version, actually. So you might prefer that. Yeah. He not as much as the book, but like you definitely see him getting sick. You see him getting attacked by the flies, and you see like a lot of the staticky phone calls, and you do see like the sores on his hands pop up.
Okay. Cool. All right.
Good to know.
We'll add it to our mini-sode watch list. Okay, so George did more research to figure out what the Red Room is for, and he found out this was Native American land where the house was, but the Native Americans wouldn't even use this area as a burial ground because they thought it was infested with demons. Again, I'm out of there. Like, what?
So fast. So fast.
The first white settler in the house was John Ketchum, and Kathy asked George if she thought it was haunted. And he's like, don't be crazy. What?
I would be mad. I'd be like,
George, I'm going to need you to take a step back.
Yeah.
Crazy?
Believe me,
I'll show you crazy.
Yes, exactly.
So the main difference here in the movie is that they don't really bring up the whole Native American thing. They just stick to the Defoe or look, you got me saying
I'm
it.
sorry.
The DeFeo.
I'm so bad with names, you guys. It's like not even funny.
The movie sticks to just the DeFeos and their story and how that's affecting the family, not Native American story.
George stressed about money, so he wonders where the DeFeo money was. So all of a sudden it clicks, oh my gosh, it might be in the boathouse. And so the next day, Kathy wouldn't go in the living room until that lion statue's out and gone. The father's hands were so painful, he had to get a blessing from another priest. And the boys were fighting so bad. They didn't want to clean up the playroom. They threatened to run away from home. It's just chaos everywhere.
No, that does not happen.
Nope, not in the movie.
No. In the movie, we've got Ryan Reynolds sleeping downstairs in the basement because for some reason that's where he feels closest to the demon. And
oh my gosh.
It makes sense in the book that he's sleeping in the living room, right? Where he's like stoking the fire because he's like, ooh, it's too cold. We got to keep it warm. Whereas in the movie, it's literally just like, ooh, this is where the presence is. I'm going to sleep here.
Yeah, it's never said like that, but like the demon inside him, you can tell is pulling him towards it. Very odd.
Again, I just feel bad for George getting portrayed this way.
I know. That would be the worst part is like, no wonder they had a
no wonder he went after them
lawsuit
like,
going on.
guys.
Yeah,
But they got Ryan Reynolds to play him though, so it kind of evens out.
It does even out a little bit.
So it is now right after midnight on New Year's Eve, and Kathy saw this white demon face in the fire, and George saw it too. And they went to bed around 1 a.m. and they were woken up because the blankets were torn off, the windows were open, and winds were howling. And they see the sewing room and the playroom windows are open, and they try and shut them, but George barely could. So they go to Missy's room, and she is fast asleep in a very warm room, and the rocking chair is slowly moving. So they're like, you got to come with us. So they take her downstairs, and George starts a fire, and Kathy's crying because she's so scared. And then back to the father, and his blisters are so bad they're about to burst.
I remember them being angry about windows, but it doesn't happen quite to this extent.
No, yeah. There are windows.
There are windows in the house.
Yeah.
That's about all the similarities at this point.
Basically, it got so bad. I was like, I don't even know. Where did they decide to like? Why did they even try to tie it together? Like, why did they
The director like definitely didn't read the book ever. Like
Yeah,
read the Spark
exactly.
or something.
He just watched the
Yeah.
1979 movie and he was like, all right, let's try to work off this.
We're gonna
Yeah,
do
he's like, this is
and
fine.
this.
Or he had a whole idea of a story. Then he's like, if we throw Amityville on, it's a famous name,
That was probably
and people will go to it. So,
Brand-
There probably is.
Yes. Oh man. All right. So there are perfume smells in the kitchen, and they had a very nice family meal together, and George put Harry outside, and like things are seeming okay now. Harry fell asleep, and then he's like, oh shoot, I still need to take you to the vet. And George went to bed, and he noticed there were hoof prints all over, and they're little pig prints to the garage, and then that's the
Pig prints.
garage door. Little pig prints, and the garage door is blown off. So
Now, obviously, because Jody is not a pig, yes, that did not happen.
well, some other demon thing going on. Kathy felt the presence again in the kitchen, and she's like, this time she feels a male and a female presence, and she's like being pulled, and she eventually passes out. And George went,
That would be so weird.
like
Yeah.
feeling this presence
Yeah.
pulling you.
Yeah, and being like, ooh, there's a male presence and a female presence, and
The male
Freaky.
one's evil, and that would be weird.
Yeah.
George went to the bar after work, and he spoke to the bartender, and the bartender's like, yeah, I bartended at a house party once, and I had nightmares about that red room, and that there were pig killings and dog killings in it and everything like that. So on point with everything we've heard.
Yep.
George called the father to come bless the house finally. And they were able to talk until George described what was happening in the house, and then it got all staticky again. They took Harry to the vet, and he's totally fine. The father blessed the house from the church, but this made his room start smelling like sewage, and he remembers reading that this meant there was devil work involved.
Oh, I have a few notes that I've been too into the story.
Okay, sorry.
The boathouse doors never break in the movie, which is kind of a very like key point to the book.
Right.
So I was like, how again, the director just was doing his own thing. And I was really upset about this pig thing, 'cause the next thing is no pig thing.
Wow.
Shocker.
Pig in there.
You're really stuck on this.
I mean, there's a horror movie where someone dresses up like a pig. I can't think of it.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I do know what you're talking about, but I can't remember what it is.
I can't either, but I think that's what I had in my head. So then to not see that, I'm like, come on, guys. That's what I wanted. Yeah.
This is gonna be like one of those things that bugs me that I couldn't remember what you're talking about, and then like 3:15 in the morning comes and I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be like, that was the name.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Good?
Yes, good
Okay.
now.
All right. So the house is super cold again, or still, it's always been cold. The father's room still smelled. He's trying to talk to his colleagues, but ended up yelling at everyone, which the father never does. So everyone's quite shocked. And George is trying to figure out what to do with this lion statue because he moved it upstairs, but all of a sudden it's downstairs again.
Again, that would freak me out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
totally
spooky. Spooky.
That's going to Goodwill.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
George is woken up by music, like a marching band. He goes downstairs to check what it is, and he doesn't see anything. George gets a fear. He's like, oh my gosh, I left Kathy by herself. He runs back upstairs, and she's floating above the bed. She's fast asleep, but she's floating there. And then she eventually drops to the floor and wakes up, and George doesn't tell her what happened. He's like, oh, you just fell out of bed. Are you okay?
I just want to know why he doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to know if I was levitating. Like, I really don't. I don't think I would.
What is this?
Oh my gosh. No way.
Yeah. And then George in the movie does not care about anyone. So he wouldn't have even been like, let me go check on her.
Nope. He cares about that fire.
No,
That's it.
Yeah, that fire. And apparently he's also watching home videos at this point too, in my notes. Yeah. I'm like, where did that come into play?
Then with movies, they just add random things. Like they could have kept the playroom, but they added this.
But added, yeah, like him watching home videos. Okay, that's a good change.
So the father went to his mom's house to have her take care of him. Oh, I love that. He still needs his mom. And George is officially freaked out now.
Because he wasn't before.
I know. He's trying not to freak Kathy out though. So he's trying to get a hold of the father again and be like, we really need you.
No, that does not happen in the movie. No.
I'll keep going.
There's quite a few books where we have this, where it's like she'll just be like, "This happens in the book," and then this happens, and I'll be like, "No,
like
No,
doesn't
doesn't happen."
Yeah. I'm like glad it was there for the directors and screenplay writers to try and work, but yeah.
Just ignore you.
Yeah. The father and George had a phone call and George explained everything that's happening. The father is about to agree to come over and then he felt a slap on the face and the static on the phone began again and the father began to cry and he went home. I felt so bad for him.
I did too. He really got the short end of the stick here.
Yeah,
he really did. He cared
just trying
so
to help
much about
out.
that family too. Yeah, I know. And then he had to deal with some stuff.
Bad.
Yeah.
No fun. George went to check on Harry, who's still sleeping, and he heard the marching band from inside the house again. And Kathy is still sleeping, but all the furniture has been moved now. So
weird.
Get out of there.
Very weird.
Do you have anything you want to add, or are you just gonna be like, nah, it doesn't happen? None of this happens.
No, a lot of my notes are like
At the end,
later in what you're talking about. So
because none of this happens.
yeah,
Okay.
and like if it does happen, it happens in like very weird, odd ways that does not align with the book.
Okay, fair. So the father spoke with the other clergymen about who were more trained in devil work, or he spoke with men who were more trained in devil work. Excuse me. They explained all the different types of devil work, and they said this house couldn't be controlled by the devil because only people or animals are controlled by the devil. And he's like,
Have you heard of Jody the pig?
Yeah.
and
Y'all heard of Jody?
he told them to tell the Lutz to do some testing on the house, though, but he is never to return to that house.
No. A note that I have back here is that no supernatural people come to investigate the house, which is basically what you're about to start talking about.
What I'm about to start talking about. Father called the house, but George couldn't hear. And because George was trying to figure out where the blood smell was coming from the red room. And Father eventually goes to them and says, hey, you need to get a scientific researcher out there. And George is upset, but he calls Kathy and lets her know. And Kathy agreed to do anything that the church says.
When I got to this part in the book, I was like, who actually would be like, all right, let's just have people come investigate the house. If you're at that point already, why aren't you leaving?
Yes.
It's a great question. Like, at least I understand like not selling the house immediately, but like, why are you not living with your parents or like
Yeah.
in a hotel room or something? Just like
Why are you like,
I couldn't sleep
I'll
in this
stay
house
here.
one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Nah.
This lion statue keeps moving. It's cold. There's been flies everywhere.
My wife
The
is
marching
levitating.
band at 3 a.m. Like, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Nah,
They're
that
just
I can deal
practicing their
with.
drum line
Yes.
casually.
Like you can't even fall asleep in the house because of all the noise. Why stay there?
No.
Oh man. So George sent the letter to the researchers, but he also called his coworker's girlfriend, and she's a medium. So she comes over and says, or before she comes over, she says, look for a well because I have a feeling your spirits are coming from a well. And then with the father, we get a phone call telling that the priest, the father, my brain is all over the place. I'm so sorry. Father got a phone call telling the priest not to come back or he will die.
In the movie, there is no well on the property, and I was kind of mad about that.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, how are these spirits coming through here?
Yeah.
Not explained, not addressed.
Yeah. They're just here.
Yes. All right. So in the book, they let Harry stay in the house tonight. And he ran around with his tail between his legs and hid on the third floor all night.
If your dog is acting like that, why?
I'm out.
That would have
That's
been
my
yeah,
dog.
exactly.
My dog
Yeah.
comes first.
Yes.
Yeah.
If my dog's uncomfortable, I'm
Yeah.
leaving and I'm taking
Yeah.
him with me.
During the night, George thought he heard a boat on the water, and Kathy was levitating again. But now, not only is she levitating, she looks like a 90-year-old woman. And he pulls her down. She wakes up. He's freaked out. So she freaks out and runs to the bathroom, and she has like dark lines on each cheek. And they called the father again, let him know what happened. He got angry when he heard that they had a medium coming out, and he told them to leave the house immediately. And George is like, it's okay, we're fine.
Right here, I was like, wow, why is he being a true man? Like, you have experienced everything in this house. Yeah. Why is it like, nah, we're fine.
He's like, also, don't you just hate it when you like levitate and you wake up looking like a 90-year-old woman?
Yeah.
Like, it's just so annoying.
It's the worst.
For real.
Oh my gosh. So the father has the flu again, and George's coworker and girlfriend come over, and she's looking around. And
Wait, isn't the coworker and his girlfriend the Warrens? Or
It's
are they
the
way
medium.
later? okay. Sorry.
They're later. This is some
I keep
other
trying to like.
this is like some
I'm
other
like, right
indie
now.
medium.
That's why we
Yeah,
have the
not yet.
professionals on our podcast. So she's describing everything to George and told her as if George told her, which she didn't. So like she's describing everything in the house that's going on, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you know all these things." And they go to the second floor, and she comes in like this trance. She uses this voice that George recognizes but doesn't know where. And Harry's staying with the boys again because it's cold outside, and he should because he's a dog, and dogs should be with their people. And it clicked. He's like, "Oh my gosh, that voice I heard was the father." And Father Mancuso, right? I feel bad just calling him the father and not giving him his full name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They changed the name anyway, so
Oh, okay. All right.
he's a man of many names.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
It's because he doesn't exist. They're like, we shouldn't call you by your real name because you're not that character.
Yeah, in the movie.
Yeah.
So he got a phone call from Francine the median, and she's like, "I'm not coming back to that house because I'm worried I'm going to be in physical danger."
That would freak me out.
Another sign.
Again.
100%.
Yeah, that's
Nope.
Because there hasn't been enough signs already.
I don't. What are they looking for at this point? Like,
I
what
know.
would it take to actually get them out of this house? Like, I feel like it's like the border is verging on like physical harm, which it should never, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh. I know. I feel like they're waiting for the one person who's like, "Oh, you guys are crazy. Nothing's here." Instead, every single person has been like, "Leave.
You need to get
Leave.
out of here."
Get
Yeah.
out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kathy's brother and wife came over after their honeymoon for a night, and they got set up in Missy's room. And at 3:15 a.m., a little boy was sitting on the edge of their bed, and they freaked out. Kathy and George took a Bible and started blessing every room except the kids' room because they're sleeping. We'll do that tomorrow. Bad choices. So they tried to go in the sewing room, but the thunder was so loud, and there was whining noises and the wind, and it was just they couldn't fix that room.
Yeah, that didn't happen in the movie.
No, they're not a team player in the movie.
No, they're not. They are very divided.
Oh man. These stories where I talk all the time. Okay. Kathy is yelling at the kids because there's green goop coming out of the walls. She wants to know which kid did it. And George is like, maybe it wasn't any of them. And Kathy suggests leaving the house. But they stay because George says, let's stay. And
obviously,
I would be out of there. I'd be like, okay, you stay. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna take the kids. You can stay here.
These are my kids.
Down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
So weird stuff keeps going on. The family gets scared. They start running around the whole house, and the police officer's watching again. And he's like, "Oh man, what the heck's happening there?" Running around.
What is going on? No.
Okay.
Doesn't happen.
Kathy woke up and saw herself in the mirror, and she looked like a weird form creature. And her reflection said that she will destroy everyone if she takes that crucifix. She falls back to sleep somehow. And George grabbed the Bible, and he went
how.
He went downstairs and read it, and George is reading it. He noticed like a fire figure person thing start reaching out from the fire, and he burns George a bit. He jumps back in time, but he did feel those flames.
What's crazy to me is they give so many good, like, you would love to see this in a movie, yet
so many scary details that we're not in.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Like,
I have like a full list in my notes of like things that were not included in the movie that like definitely should have been, because they're just so like perfectly curated for a horror movie.
Instead, they were like, right? Here's Ryan Reynolds shirtless.
Yes. Exactly.
That's literally exactly what this movie is.
I feel like
there's
they
a
went with
torture
the, like,
dungeon down the
demon.
basement.
Yeah, exactly. That part got so weird. I was like, what?
Where was this?
Yep.
Who agreed with this?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So Kathy's mom gets a frantic phone call saying, you need to come over here now. And so she goes over there, and Kathy's midsection is burned with boils all over it, but they're hot to the touch. So her mom got burned and George got burned just by touching these boils. And her mom stays for a little bit. And while she's there, George and the kids went to the library, and George took a book on demon research. He calls the father again, and George is saying all these demon names to him, and then the line cuts out.
Why are you trying to like speak
Demon.
Yeah, like I don't want to call them to me. Like, if you already live in a house that's this creepy, why?
He's
He's
the worst possible thing.
Yeah, he's past help at this point. Like, you just gotta let him rock. Like,
keep going. You've got this, George. You do it.
So they went to the locked windows before bed, but Danny, which is one of the sons, fingers got stuck in the windows, and they were completely flattened by the time they got them out. They all sleep in the master. Hello.
my dog didn't like that.
Oh, I love puppies. What type of dog? Sorry, I have to ask now.
He's a chihuahua.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
Sorry, I
He's a
couldn't answer because they're still barking.
Oh no, you're fine.
They're like, hey, we don't want those demons over here. Can you stop?
And so they woke up because rain is pouring inside the house, and it's just like, or not in the house, but it's just all over. It's a big, huge storm going on.
At least in the movie, there is a big, huge storm at the end.
There is.
But
yeah,
again, just small key details are like, oh yeah, we'll keep this.
Yeah.
Rain, perfect horror movie.
They clean up the mess from the rain, and they got the phone call from the researcher guy, and they said that, hey, if you have a dog, they're pretty sensitive to this thing. So George is like, okay. He takes Harry around the house, and Harry's acting really freaked out, and he's like, especially around the playroom and the sewing room, and George is trying to figure out what the heck is wrong with you. Why are you freaked out? And I'm like, the researcher guy just told you.
Yeah, I know.
This is the reason you're taking your dog around, but you're wondering why.
Stop freaking out. It's not that scary.
It's not that serious.
Yeah.
We've been here for how long now, dog?
Oh my gosh. So Missy says that Jody wants to come inside, and no, thank you. They're running up, and they see little piggy eyes in her room, and Father had a meeting with the bishop, and the bishop told him to leave this house alone, and he has someone else working on it. And Father, you need to go see a psychiatrist because you're all sorts of messed up right now. Okay, rude. I would be messed up too.
For real.
Go experience
He's
this
got a good
house and then tell me.
He does.
Yeah. There's stuff like you've already talked about flies, so I can say that flies in the movie come through a vent rather than through a window because there's no playroom window, which I almost feel like in a window, it kind of makes sense for flies to come, not the amount of flies that come through in the book, but through a vent, I feel like that would be a little bit creepier because that's like in your house. Like, where did you come from?
That's why they did it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Kathy's family never comes to visit, which I feel like, again, family should have came to visit because that would have also driven the point home. Like, ooh, this is creepy. But instead,
no,
they're focusing on
It's like
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, exactly. They just needed to give him more screen time, but like he should have been in the movie because it drives it home that it's not just them. It's like
Exactly.
and it kind of like
Everyone.
it X's out the possibility of this being like a group psychosis or like something like that. Like it is literally everyone that comes to visit is like, this house is freaking weird. Get out.
That's actually a very good point. I didn't think about that.
So George gets a phone call from the researcher saying he's got the flu, so I can't come out till Wednesday. And Kathy's watching Missy feed something under the table that's not Harry. And George gets home from work where this tax meeting he had to do went horrible, and he hears Harry barking from the back. He runs out there. Also, by this point in the book, I'm just sitting there waiting for Harry to die because he died in the movie, and I'm so happy he did not. die in the book? Did he die in the real story? No,
He
he's
does
good.
not die in the real
Okay.
story. He's all good.
That was my note.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I stole it.
No, you're fine.
The kids bring Harry back into the house, and the window repair guy comes. They fix the house, but he couldn't fix Missy's window because they needed a carpenter to fix that window first. At 3:15, the marching band wakes George up again, and he decides, I don't need to check on it because Harry's down there. That's where I thought he was going to die. And
My dog's down there. It's fine.
yeah, what a horrible person. A little while later, Kathy wakes up because George is speaking in tongues, saying it's it's over, Chris, which is their other son.
Very creepy.
Creepy. Don't bring the kids into it.
No.
Mhm.
And it's like being the stepdad, I'd be like, okay, time to go, children. Let's leave.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
Like not
point.
even their
Not their real father.
no. Like there's a difference.
Uh,
So no one slept that night, and they decide, okay, we got to move out the next day. We're gonna move out. Called the father, called the father, and he decided he's tired of being scared, so he's gonna go help these people. And the house didn't want them to leave, so he broke the cars down, broke the boat down. Big storm happened. They were stuck inside again, and it's freezing. Kathy wakes up in sort of a trance and goes over to Harry, and then she falls back asleep, and Harry starts vomiting, which makes George vomit. It's like a nightmare all over the
Everything
place.
is going wrong.
Yes.
Well, everything's been going wrong, but
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
This is not any better.
Yep. Once everything calms down a little bit, they hear the boys' beds moving around upstairs, and George has no strength, so he hears that marching band again, and he's just like, it's coming up the stairs now, and he felt pig hooves all over him. And
This is again, I think, why I was so mad about Jody not being the pig, because it's such a like prominent part of the book's story that it's like, how could you make that a person? Like a person
it's like
walking on
it's
your
like
back.
Such an
changing
important
the
detail.
species.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
At this point in the movie, George is now tearing down the basement wall where we find a room where there was torturing happening.
Okay.
Because
sorry, I
that
totally
happened.
spoiled that earlier. Sorry.
No, you're
it's
good.
fine.
We do that all the time.
All the time.
So eventually, or you got more? You good?
Oh, well, I guess also now George's, I think this was creepy, where he started making coffins for his family. Like,
That was
all
weird.
right, here you go. Yeah.
Freaky.
But
That was
also,
not in the original movie, I don't
I
think.
know. I love watching
No,
on
it wasn't,
Instagram as
yeah.
all these like
all these new details
Yes.
in this movie. Yeah, he makes
Creepy.
coffins for the whole family, which
What a little freak.
yes.
Mhm, yeah.
Yeah.
Poor George in
I
this movie.
know. So eventually George woke up because Danny and Chris were in his room screaming. There's a monster in their room. It turned out to be that faceless figure, and they booked it to the car, and the cars were working now, and they drove off, and that was the 28th day of staying in that house.
In the movie, the family in the Ryan Reynolds version, the family ends up staying a little bit longer than 28 days. And then they leave by boat.
Mm-hmm.
And they also are running from George because George is coming after them, trying to kill them.
But it's like the mom realizes, oh, it's the house. So she like knocks George out and then takes him with her.
Yeah.
I would have been
Smart.
like, nope.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would not have clicked that it was the house. I would have been like,
Well,
I would have just been so like
the other thing too, I feel like the movie has definitely been playing into a demon possessing George. So how are you now at the end going to say, no, it was just the house doing this? Like, shouldn't there be a demon
switched it up
still
real
that you have to?
they
Yeah.
did.
Right.
I don't even
Just
get
kidding.
that. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Mm-hmm. And if it was the house, wouldn't it be affecting everyone else in the house like it
Right.
does in the book?
I
rather
think
than-
they were like playing on the fact that they related him to the DeFeo dad,
that's true.
but still,
Yeah.
Hollywood. So we're just about done with the book. They called the father and let him know, hey, we're out of the house. And they wouldn't let us leave, or it wouldn't let us leave the night before. The father's hands were getting blotchy and itchy again. George hung up. They flew to California. They told the researchers, hey, you can do the investigation, but we're not coming back to that house. And George went to sleep, but he had a dream that Kathy was floating away from him and he couldn't remember her name and the slime was back. And oh no, Sam,
That ghosting.
The demon got her again. Oh, she said a demon possessed her laptop. So hopefully she'll be able to make it back on. But we can just keep going. She'll
We're
pop back here at some point.
we're almost done. So yes, it's fine. And so the slime came back and they realized, oh my gosh, this house is gonna follow us everywhere. And then we have an epilogue a few months later. The researchers, they had very similar experience with the house. The father was healed by Good Friday and reassigned to a new church. Missy gets upset when talking about Jody. The boys can still describe the details of the monster in their room. Kathy will not talk about that time in her life. And George sold all his share in the job, and he continues to tell the story in hopes to warn people about darkness. Dark entities. Darkness, the darkness. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So do you have any like things that we missed or things that you want to bring up?
So
Yeah.
I do have a couple of little like differences that I have noted here. I'm like so scared of spoiling your guys' like
no, you
flow.
definitely could have.
So I just thought it was really interesting how like in the book it builds such like suspense and I know it's kind of hard to compare like pacing in a book and a movie because they're two like totally different mediums, but the entire time like the book is building up to this like huge climactic like 28th day in the house where like this white robed figure comes out of nowhere and like says that like basically chases the kids out of the house and chases them all out of the house, like whatever. And then in the movie, at least also in like the 1979 movie, like it's not really like they're not really building up to a point. I feel like it was just like freaky things happening like all the time, whereas in the book, like they're progressively getting worse.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a
That's
little
actually a good point.
Thank you. I try. I'm not a film major, but I do try. And so also after all these events took place, they put together like sort of like a paranormal like dream team. So they brought in like a bunch of like mediums and I think it was Ed and Lorraine Warren and then two mediums and then I believe someone from that parapsychology institute.
Oh yeah.
And they all went into the house and they all were like, okay, there's something like so foul, like there's a horrible presence in this house. So I know to me, it's not worth like staying in that house
No,
for
why
as long
has
as
that
they
house
did.
not been burned down?
I was about to ask, is it still standing?
It is not still standing.
Oh,
It
good.
is not.
I
Okay.
believe it was knocked. I'm like 90% sure it was knocked down and then another house was built on the property. So people still pass and like see that. But if you ever
I
see a
wouldn't
picture of
want-
it and it has those like windows that look like the eyes. Have you ever seen like
yeah.
a picture of the house? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was something that both movies like
Oh,
actually incorporated because it's like like that's so freaky looking, right? It looks like the house is watching.
Oh yeah.
But and then one other like little like I had to bring something paranormal in because it's like East Coast
absolutely.
haunts, I gotta pull my weight here a little bit. So so speaking of Ed and Lorraine Warren, they have a theory and it's called like the 28-day theory. And it basically says like it takes 28 days in a specific like location for you to really become like in tune with the paranormal presences in that. So it takes like 28 days to like weaken the veil between worlds. And that's like their theory. And I believe it was their not their stepson, their son-in-law that like kind of took that theory and ran with it after they died. So he's been like kind of trying to prove this theory. There's a whole like Netflix documentary on it, which is
Really?
pretty interesting.
What is it called?
And it's called 28 Days Haunted, I think is what it's
Okay.
called.
Okay.
It's really interesting because the fact that they were in this house for like exactly 28
28
days.
days.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
So
weird. Ooh, I want to watch that.
is that
Yeah.
creepy?
That is creepy.
That's
Is this where they came up with the theory, or this was just
It,
one of the additional things to add to it? Oh wow.
I don't know. It might be. Yeah.
Mhm. That's cool.
that's so cool.
Yeah. All right. Should we do you have anything else? Are we
I'm all good.
okay?
All right.
So
All right.
IMDb cast 24 people. We have Ryan Reynolds as George Lutz. I mean, I saw the movie first, so I have no recast because
You love them.
I love them.
I think they should have cast in like Everyday Joe for
I
George.
totally agree. I agree.
Mhm.
Ryan Reynolds
Mhm.
was too hot to be George.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially like, because then you almost root for him as he's going more and more evil. You're like, oh, but
Exactly.
it's fine. He'll work it out in the end. Stay. But can I think of an average Joe actor? My brain just went to Michael Cera, but he's way too young to have
Way too young.
That'd be crazy.
Could you imagine him then in that movie? Oh my gosh.
And he would be amazing. Okay, so a Michael Cera-esque person.
Okay, fair. So we have Melissa George as Kathy Lutz.
She, for some reason, drives me crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't recast her, but I feel bad when I say I don't like actors on our podcast, but I don't like her.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's something about her face.
Wow, rude. She's in
Oh, is she in From Hell?
I don't know. I know she's in Grey's Anatomy. She's not a favorite character in Grey's Anatomy, so maybe that's why you don't like her.
That's where I
Oh,
recognized her
that's
from.
probably it. Actually, who is she in Grace?
She was the friend of Meredith that was like the she almost went rogue type of intern.
Oh, actually, I think that's exactly why I don't like her.
Okay, so you don't like her because she convinced you
Of a
in other
character that
work.
she did very well.
That would
Yes.
be it. That's a compliment, right? She did so well in other work. There you go. I'm sorry, we're just going fast. We
I know.
assume you're doing yes, good.
Go
Have
ahead.
anyone
No,
you wanna-
I'm good with the
Okay.
casting, so
Okay. Chloe Grace Moretz, Chelsea Lutz.
Moretz, girl.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I always call her Mortez. Always.
Okay. Okay, I'm glad.
All the time.
She's so cute in this movie. She's
so
so
little.
little. Yeah.
Mhm.
She's just like a little baby, yeah.
She is.
And now we know that she did her own stunts.
Yes.
Very impressive, yeah.
Yes. Isabel Connor played Jody, who was supposed to be a pig. So
Yeah.
you would recast a pig.
I would absolutely, babe, where you at?
Okay.
All right. Is the theme of the book and the movie the same?
No. Other than haunted house, but the
Oh,
theme of the movie is
oh,
Man kills family.
possess. Yeah. Possession. Possession. Wow. I'm trying to make a cool term here.
on fleek way of saying.
Actually, that's a good point. I didn't think about
I
that.
mean, that's my thoughts. Do the characters stay true to how they're written in the book and the movie?
No, that poor father.
No.
Mm-mm.
Not
Yep.
at all. Yeah.
And then the main thing that we ask now is, which do we prefer? So do you have a preference? Do you prefer book or movie?
I do. I liked the book better, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I read a little bit. Does this align with your theory? Do you figure out like, or you said like whichever one you read or watched first is
Mhm.
usually the one you like better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think I liked the book better personally. Like I said, I just feel like there was a better like pacing and
Yeah.
like storyline, the gradual build of suspense, and also I think the book has like a much more ominous ending with like the slime trail or like whatever like
Mhm.
that they, it followed them from the original house. And also, I just think that the book is like much more detailed in terms of accounts, and there's additional events that happen in the book that they're not shown in the movie. So, like the extensive conversations between the parents and Missy with about Jody, the pig demon,
Yeah.
also the fact that she's not a pig. Um, like the green
Thank you.
slime running down the walls. No, it is a very disconcerting artistic choice to make, I think. So
It makes no
yeah,
sense to me.
I would rather her be a pig, I think.
Yes,
A
I
pig is
agree.
creepier in my eyes.
I watched this for the podcast with my boyfriend, and the whole time I was just like, "This is supposed to be a pig."
She's supposed to be a pig.
He's like,
See,
"Why?"
I watched it with my boyfriend too. I watched it with my boyfriend too. We were watching it, but we watched the 1979 version. He was like, "Why is it a pig?" I was like, "It's because."
It's supposed
Why
to
do you have
be.
to question it?
Oh my gosh. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's just I would prefer it to be a pig. I think the book like had I was more scared of Jody in the book than I was in the movie, which is like very hard
Yeah.
to do. I think yeah, to scare you more in a book, like words on a page versus like something that you're seeing and like experiencing and being immersed in. And then like also just the fact that like some of the like book to movie adaptations, especially to the 1979 version, they were a little bit lazy, I thought. Like the ceramic lion, he like trips over it once, but there's no like bite marks. And like the marching band is like one drum beat, and then it's just kind of like a little bit lazy. And then of course they don't show
Yeah.
like the levitation of crucifix. So it's like there's a whole lot of these aspects that are missing, and like a lot of the backstory's missing too. I preferred the book personally. Long way of saying that, but
That's good.
Hey,
Yeah.
we appreciate the
Yes.
long way.
Yep.
Allie.
I watched the movie first and I liked the movie. But if
okay.
I was comparing like true story, I would have to choose because it's like we've said, it's not really related at all.
Not in the slightest.
So it came down to which would I rather do again, and I would watch Ryan Reynolds over and over again. So I think that's why
Fair.
I
Totally
chose.
fair.
But yeah, if I wanted the true story, I definitely would not watch the movie. I would go read the book. So, but I liked the movie.
And then I actually I went off our theory here because since I'm a true crime aficionado, I this time after having read the book and then watching it, I was like, what did they do? Like I love a good horror movie, and I used to love this
Me
movie.
too.
But after this watch of it, I was like, wow, they just decided to take
Yeah.
the story and run with it and make it their own rather than actually tell it for what it is. So I prefer the book.
All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I wish we could get Sam's opinion.
Well, she didn't read or
I
she only
know.
watched it.
She watched it.
But she didn't read the book,
preferred
so
the
I think
movie.
she's going with the movie on this one.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh my
Tell
gosh, it was a
Sam thank you.
blast.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we'll have to do it again. Or
Maybe.
maybe we
Yeah.
have to join you on one of yours.
Yeah, maybe.
We would
Yes.
love to have you guys on the pod. Sam just texted me and she said the demon has now gotten into her Wi-Fi, so she had to restart it. But I told
Oh,
her that we were
no.
able to wrap
Oh, no.
things up.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you guys again. She'll give you a proper goodbye. But
Oh gosh, no worries.
but thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you. This was such a blast. It was just such a good collaboration. I feel like our conversations flowed so well. So again,
agree.
like if you guys want to come on the podcast, we'll pick like a fun, maybe like a haunted movie theater or like a haunted library.
that would
something.
be
Something
so
like that, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm down.
We actually have one, the Regal in Auburn.
What?
Yeah, one of those. I think it's Theater 12 is supposedly haunted.
Ooh.
I mean, I don't know how haunted.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
We'll have to find that. We'll be in touch about that for sure because that would be
Okay.
really, really fun.
That would be super fun.
Awesome.
Yes.
I would love that.
Yeah. All right. Well, once again, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah.
You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We have a website. It's just call me a bad podcast host. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think
I
it's
don't
like
know ours either.
I think it's like
We're like-
www.eastcoasthaunts.wix.com, something like that. We're on
Yep, that's
Instagram.
us.
Yeah.
The free
This is the
website,
best.
Wix. Gotta love Wix.
Exactly. We're on Instagram and we're on Facebook too. We're pretty easy to find. So yeah, that's all I got.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
We'll be talking to you soon.
Yes. All
For
right.
sure.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, guys.
We'll
We really
see you. Yep.
appreciate you having us on.
Of course.
Of
Of course. All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, you guys, that was so much fun. That was a blast.
That was,
I actually loved that.
that was really cool.
That was so
fun
much fun.
collab. That was a lot
That was
of fun.
so much fun.
Super
I
shout
really-
out to East Coast Haunts.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yes.
We loved having you.
Yes.
We can't wait to be on yours.
Maybe we'll have to link their
I'm going to.
yeah, not only them, but their specific Amityville episode.
Oh, that's a good idea. Actually,
Mhm.
I'll email them after this.
Yeah. And then yeah. Okay, you guys. Monday we have Percy Jackson
Mhm.
and the Lightning Thief.
This is actually one of my favorite books, guys.
Hey, look, and we have another guest on our podcast. Right, two for you. Right after.
Yeah, this one's with our good friend Cassidy, who
Yeah.
doesn't listen to the podcast.
Rude.
How dare you?
But he's the one who made me read Percy Jackson for the first time.
Oh, funny. I actually think Percy Jackson was why he and I bonded, because I loved that book and he did too.
How fun.
And he was my reading buddy
Oh, yeah.
in middle school.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then next Wednesday, we have a mini-sode for you.
Mm-hmm.
What should it be about? Maybe we'll watch the 1997,
Actually, I'm down.
19, what is
It's got
77,
Pig Jody 79.
79.
It's got Pig Jody in it. I'm down.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Will we remember?
No.
That is our plan. Come find out if we stuck to it.
Guys, we're recording this at the beginning of March. So
Yes. We'll see. All right, you guys. So I almost took your line.
you did. And I almost let you.
So
I was
sorry.
like, why'd you stop?
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, with that, Amityville Horror went way off script.
Let's try it again. I got distracted because there was a flash on the thing.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay. With that, Amityville Horror went way off script.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. What are we doing? Bye.
Why did it sound like you said bye, human?
Said bye. Oh, what are we doing? Because you're like, instead of saying bye, I got confused.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for sticking with us.
We hope you enjoyed it.
If you did, we would greatly appreciate it if you gave us 5 beautiful stars, reviewed, and subscribed.
You can also follow us on Facebook at Offscript, on Instagram at OffscriptPodcast21, and on TikTok at Offscript_pod.
Shoutouts to Madame Ashen Creations for our adorable logo art.
And Adam Daniel for our incredible theme song.
And to Creative Cinephile Productions for producing our podcast.
See you next time.